Welcome to Tech Summit. I am Sumi. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Azure Active Directory. And today I'm going to be talking about how Azure Active Directory enables productivity and protection for your employees, partners, and customers. In the not too distant past, when it came to enterprise IT, the reality of securing identity and access for users to apps, devices, and data all existed completely on premises. But with the explosion of services, both personal and professional, and all of these available readily in the cloud, add to this the evolution of personal devices and endpoint capability, the on-premises world has become but just one node in today's world. And nobody feels this more than IT, defined by multiple social and organizational identities across various cloud services accessed on many and different types of personal and work devices. IT's world has undergone a sea change. Add to this the increased capability and sophistication of hackers and bad actors and their targeting of enterprise user identities. Identity and access management is one of the biggest challenges faced by enterprises today. Not just from the perspective of managing user access, but also from the perspective of security. As the Active Directory company, this is a change that we're well aware of, and with Azure Active Directory, our cloud identity and access management offering, we believe that the solution to this problem is in thinking about identity as the new control plane. Unlike the on-premises world, in the cloud, the user identity is the constant that unlocks productivity and protection. Over this presentation, I will talk about how Azure Active Directory enables this productivity and protection using identity as the new control plane. For those unfamiliar with what Azure Active Directory is, it is a cloud and identity and access management solution that helps bridge your on-premises reality to the cloud, and it plays the role of a hub that your users authenticate to with a single identity, and then they can access the services and apps across cloud and on-premises from any location and from any device. Azure AD also extends this identity and access to your partners and customers as well. Another important thing to mention here is that the Azure AD is built on industry standards, and hence it scales easily. It also works with your on-premises infrastructure and is built to leverage your existing investments with options that enable us to meet you where you are in your journey to the cloud. And this is evident with some of the great customer momentum that we have seen in the market in terms of adoption. Over 90% of Fortune 500 companies today use Azure AD for their cloud identity and access management needs. We recently hit a huge milestone in terms of having more than 1 billion identities stored on Azure Active Directory. But what is Azure Active Directory? And I think one of the key things that I'd like to cover today is in terms of the pillars that define where we are and what we think about when we talk about Azure Active Directory. The first of those is to provide seamless access for your employees from any location and from any device. This is one of the key premises that organizations look to cloud identity and access management for, and this is one of the key problems that we solve, and accordingly, it's one of our key pillars when we think about what we want to achieve with Azure Active Directory. The second pillar, of course, is that in today's world, no organization exists in isolation. And so we enable this identity and access management and extend it to your partners and customers as well. Another big reason why organizations turn to cloud is also to enable cost savings. And so one of our key pillars as we think about Azure Active Directory is also to unlock some of these IT efficiencies, help you to save costs, especially around help desk costs. And the final pillar, which is perhaps the most key in today's world, is around security and compliance. To enhance your security and compliance, we believe that identity is one of the key pillars, and accordingly, it is one of our most important priorities for Azure Active Directory as well. Now, we enable this within Azure Active Directory with a number of solutions. If we were to spend time going through each of these solutions, we would probably take the whole day. And so what we will do today is to pivot around some of the key use cases that we see our customers looking to Azure Active Directory for. Let's dive into 4 use cases which are illustrative of the pillars that we just spoke about, but in no way cover the entire spectrum of solutions that Azure Active Directory can unlock for you. The first use case that I want to talk about today is perhaps the most important use case when it comes to customers who are starting on their journey towards cloud identity and access management. The objective here is in terms of customers who want to provide their employees access to every app from any location and any device. We do this by unlocking 3 separate values. The first one is to help customers move to a hybrid model. The second one is in terms of enabling a single identity for every user, which unlocks a lot of end user value. And finally, to enable them to access thousands of apps with this one identity. When it comes to hybrid, customers usually have questions around a couple of different things. A lot of the customers today exist in a reality where Active Directory is the source of truth when it comes to the identities within their organization. When moving to the cloud or when moving particularly to a hybrid model, the questions that come up are with respect to 2 things. One, about hybrid identities or the user identities. And number 2 is in terms of the actual passwords and where they are stored and how this authentication happens. For this, we've developed a tool called Azure AD Connect. Azure AD Connect is our solution to enable you to go hybrid in an easy way. What Azure AD Connect provides is a sync engine, which basically makes sure that question 1 around the user identities is solved. It syncs these identities between Active Directory and Azure Active Directory to make sure that there is one version of truth when it comes to the user identity. Number 2 is in terms of the authentication. Azure AD Connect enables seamless authentication for these users, and to this end provides 3 types of authentication mechanisms for customers. The first one is through federation, where ADFS or another solution can be used as a means of authentication. The second one is in terms of pass-through authentication. For those customers who are not comfortable with storing their passwords in the cloud, pass-through authentication, a recent service that we made generally available, is a solution that enables you to be able to have your passwords completely on premises and using lightweight pass-through authentication agents that you could install on any domain joined server on premises. Authentication happens in a way that Azure Active Directory doesn't need to store passwords in the cloud anymore. The last and perhaps the most key secure mechanism is password hash synchronization, where Azure Active Directory stores a hash of the password and uses that information to authenticate your users. The reason why password hash synchronization is our recommended method is that it helps us to be able to defend you, our customers, against any cloud-based threat that we can perceive and ensure that if there are any user credentials that are at risk, that we are immediately able to take action and then protect those user credentials. With these 3 options, once any of those options are activated, the user's experience becomes so much more seamless because now with that single identity, the user is able to access any app that they want to use, and this extends to both on-premises apps as well as cloud apps. When it comes to Azure Active Directory, it is not just Microsoft apps or Office 365 that users are accessing via Azure Active Directory. It's also a number of third-party apps. In fact, about 334,000 is the number of third-party apps that were integrated into the Azure AD App Gallery by our customers, with at least one user authenticating to that third-party app. Our top app, of course, is Office 365, but outside of that, we have Google Apps, Workday, ServiceNow, etc. as the top 1, 2, and 3 apps in terms of what were accessed using Azure Active Directory. Another request that comes to us is in terms of being able to provide access to on-premises apps. To this end, we have made available Azure Active Directory Application Proxy that enables you to connect to your web apps on premises And for other types of apps, such as custom apps that are based on cookie or header-based authentications, we also recently released Ping Access, a module, a solution that we developed in association with Ping Identity that helps you to connect to your more custom or legacy-based on-premises apps. Apart from this, a connector to connect to your Azure or other third-party IaaS apps is also available. That brings us to the end of use case 1 in order to provide your employees access to every app from any location and any device. Now let's go to use case 2, where we can talk about how we enable this seamless access to both your partners as well as give you the ability to connect with your customers to access the apps that they need. We no longer live in an isolated world. Businesses want opportunities to work closely with other businesses and also want to connect with their customers. To this end, we enable Azure Active Directory B2B collaboration and Azure Active Directory B2C. Azure Active Directory B2B enables organizations to invite users in other organizations that use Azure Active Directory or using a Microsoft account to your directory. A shadow copy of that user is created, and then they can do almost all the activities that employees can do in your organizations. However, companies don't need to manage this guest user identity. It is managed in the identity's home directory. And so in the event that you have invited a guest user and that user leaves his or her organization, this is automatically managed between the two tenants without needing IT intervention. We're also working on extending this universe to Google and other identity providers as well. Azure Active B2C is a very different case. Azure Active B2C is primarily designed to help you connect with your customers, and hence the solution is a white-labeled version of our service, since organizations enable this to communicate with their customers, and this enables them to provide a highly customized, branded experience for their customers in programs such as customer loyalty initiatives, etc. We provide interconnections with consumer identity providers such as Google, Microsoft, Facebook, etc. We also provide self-service sign-in so that users can come in and set themselves up, and it looks like your app. This app could be an iOS app, an Android app, a Windows Universal app, or even a browser app. We also enable organizations to collect whatever information they need using custom user journeys so that as you build deeper relationships with your customers, you can get to know them better over time. This also comes with self-service capabilities that, of course, helps you cut down on help desk costs, which we run through our worldwide data centers. These data centers, by the way, follow the latest security protocols around encryption and recovery to ensure your customer information is always kept secure. Which brings us to the next use case in terms of being able to automate the user identity lifecycle and enable cost savings along the way. In order to automate the user identity lifecycle, we look at 3 separate processes as a way to do this. The first one is in terms of your joiner, mover, or leaver scenarios, especially those on the cloud. The second one is in terms of unlocking some self-service capabilities, which empowers your users to take actions on their own, but which also significantly brings down the cost on your end in terms of help desk costs. And finally, in terms of being able to give you visibility into who has access to what, and in turn, passing on some of this responsibility to your users who are probably in a better position to say what is the kind of access reviews they need over time. When talking about the user identity lifecycle, let's start right at the beginning. When a user joins an organization, a record of the user is typically created in the HR system such as Workday. When integrated with Azure AD, this triggers the user to be provisioned with an Azure Active Directory, which then enables the user access to certain dynamic groups and apps as well automatically. The user can then see all the apps they need to get started within the Access panel and can get productive right on day one. The Access panel shows the user all the apps and groups that they have access to, along with other self-service capabilities such as password reset, MFA, etc. With dynamic groups, the user can then join groups and go through an appropriate approval process to join a group. Joining this group automatically gives them access to further apps. With minimal IT intervention and with password reset, this unlocks not just cost savings, but also empowers your end user to take control of their identity and access. Now, I'll show you a few demos that'll help you see all of this in action. What you're seeing on your screen in front of you is the access panel of one of our users, Sharon. Sharon belongs to Aditum Corp, which is a company. And Sharon has just changed roles and she's looking to get access to Salesforce. When she looks at her access panel, she sees all of the apps that she has access to. She can also see the groups that she has access to. With dynamic groups, Sharon has the ability to join groups, and by joining certain groups, she can also get access to apps that she needs. In this case, Sharon is looking for a sales group, and she finds that she can see what this group is. She chooses to join this group and is asked to provide a justification. In this case, the approval process was auto-approved, but you can also design the approval process to be one that requires a manager approval or IT approval, as the case may be. Now that Sharon has got access to this group, she can see herself being added to this group. What she can also see is that the owner of the group is Eric, who is her manager, and that there's also a guest user, Alec, who's part of this group as well. This helps to inform her in terms of the kind of people that have access and obviously in terms of the kind of information that she could share there. Now when she goes back to her access panel, you can see here Sharon now has access to Aditum Salesforce, which was an app that she earlier didn't have access to. Once she joined the group and her join was approved, Sharon comes back to the access panel. She can now access Aditum Salesforce. Now, one of the users that we saw in Sharon's Salesforce group was Alec. Alec was indicated to be a guest user. Now, what we are looking at here is Alec's access panel, which shows him all the apps that he has access to. But Alex belongs to Contoso AAD, a partner organization. So when Alec Jenkins, in this case, goes and looks at his profile information, it shows him the different organizations where he has access. The default view is, of course, your home organization or the organization that you belong to, but you can also drill down and look at some of the other organizations so that you can understand what are the apps that you have access to across organizations. Now, in this case, when Alex goes to Aditum Demo, he's then able to see a different set of apps that he has access to. The other thing that I would want to demo today is the experience that Alec had when he first got access to join the partner organization, in this case, Aditum Corp. So what Alec received originally was this invite coming from Eric Grimm, who was the manager of the group. And what this invite, which is highly customizable, has sent him is that he's been invited to access applications by Aditum Demos organization by Eric Grimm. This could either be an icon like this, or it could be a profile picture of Eric himself. And what this link gives him is the ability to get started, and it would go right back to this access panel, and it would show him all of the apps that he has access to as part of Aditum Demos. Before we move on, that was the end of use cases 1, 2, and 3, which were all about enabling productivity and collaboration. Before we move on to the 4th use case, which is in terms of security and compliance, I'd like to take a minute to step back and explain the role of security in terms of cloud identity and access management. When it comes to security, we strongly believe that every step that you take towards cloud identity and access management makes you more secure. When you provide your users seamless access with one identity, you automatically reduce the attack surface and make your organization less vulnerable. When you facilitate collaboration using Azure Active Directory B2B with your partners, for instance, it is a seamless experience that we have designed from from the point of view of enabling productivity, and hence your ability to have more compliant collaboration is much higher, thus making you so much more secure. And finally, when you unlock the IT efficiency and make it easier for your users to be able to be productive without needing to have to wait or have barriers in place for them to get started with their work, your users are automatically, again, a lot more compliant. And that, again, not just unlocks IT efficiencies for you, but also makes you more secure. But there are solutions that I want to talk about today, and these are some of our best solutions that we offer, some of our most differentiated solutions, which help you to protect access to your resources from threats. In order to protect access to your resources from threats, we have unlocked 3 separate solutions which utilizes cloud intelligence, enables dynamic protection, and also does this in a way that we learn from all accesses, both good and bad, and are able to package this intelligence back to you in an actionable way. One of our key solutions to enabling security is conditional access. With conditional access, you now have the ability to define policies that for every user login, monitor conditions around the user identity, the devices they log in from, the location they are at, or the apps that they want access to. To this end, we add a session risk score that is calculated after digesting around 10 terabytes of information every single day, and which enables us to assign a risk score of high, medium, or low to a session or a user. These conditions do not operate exclusively, and you can define all or just one of them based on your requirements. Now, when a condition is met, you can also define the controls that it affects. This ranges from allowing access all the way to denying access completely. The other controls include asking the user to authenticate with another factor or multi-factor authentication, or asking the user to do a password reset. The most interesting option, though, is in terms of allowing the user limited access. This is a recently announced capability and has 2 primary use cases at this point. One gives you the ability to define limited access to a SharePoint folder, such as, think of a scenario when you want to allow access to a folder containing sensitive information where you would like to allow the user to work on the documents, but do not want them to print, share, or download the information. The second use case gives you the ability to not just authenticate the user, but extend this protection after they receive access with in-session controls. Powered by Microsoft Cloud App Security, this cool new ability enables us to keep an eye on users within an app, such as Salesforce, and block certain activities, such as downloading your company's confidential information based on how you have defined the policy. We're also constantly thinking of ways to extend this capability so that we are leveraging or making the most of your existing investments. One of the things that we announced at Ignite recently was in terms of enabling you to work with your investment into multi-factor authentication providers such as RSA, Duo Security, or Trusona. Now, we spoke about the session risk score. Let me take a minute to talk about how we derive this session risk score. We do this using the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph. As Microsoft, we have a unique bird's eye view into the activities that are happening across all of our networks. When you think about the properties that we have across Windows, Office, Bing, or even Azure Active Directory, we have the ability to look across all of these properties from a security lens and be able to identify typical patterns around device logins, malware, malicious IP addresses, denial of service, or phishing attacks, and be able to condense this information and provide it to you in a manner that is actionable. This is the intelligence that goes into the session risk score, and this is what we make available to you as part of the conditions and conditional access. Another service that I'd like to talk about today, within that enables you to enhance your security is cloud app discovery. 80% of employees in organizations, when asked, said that they use cloud apps that are not sanctioned by IT to get their work done. What cloud app discovery does is it enables you to discover the cloud apps being used on your network. You can view user and app-based usage information, and this is powered by Microsoft Cloud App Security, which is our CASB solution. But you're only as safe as your privileged identities. With Azure AD Privileged Identity Management, we enable you to extend the protection to what is perhaps your most important identities or your admin accounts. We enable you to discover, to restrict and monitor these privileged identities. With Azure AD PIM, you can enforce on-demand, just-in-time administrative access, and you can enable just-in-time or just-enough access scenarios which can be aligned to policies that are met with alerts, and also follow it up with audit reports and access reviews as well. Speaking of access reviews is another new capability that we recently announced. It gives you visibility, not just as an admin, to be able to define programs and be able to run access reviews by app or group, but it also empowers your end users to perform access reviews themselves via the access panel. Access reviews applies to both employees and guest users and can give you visibility into who has access to what. For advanced governance scenarios, we also recently announced partnerships with Omada, SailPoint, and Savient. With these partnerships, you could unlock any of these advanced governance scenarios with Azure Active Directory. Let's switch to a few demos to see conditional access and some of the things in action that I just spoke about. Here we see Sharon, our user from before, who got access to Additum Salesforce using the dynamic groups functionality. Now, Sharon is trying to access a couple of apps. In this case, she wants to go to Yammer and access that. But when she clicks on it from the access panel, what it triggers is the conditional access policy that we have defined earlier, which says that Yammer can only be joined from a domain joined device. As you can see from the panel here, what conditional access did was not just present the user with a block that didn't enable her to access the app, it also presented her with information that enables her to take action so that she understands where she's fallen behind in terms of being compliant. Let's try to see what Alec's experience is when he tries to log into Salesforce, where we have put in-session controls into place. When Alec clicks on Salesforce, it opens up the window for him. I choose the account to log in from. Alec is asked to sign a terms of use. When he tries to accept, it says that we must view the terms of use. At this point, Alec accepts the terms of use and is allowed in. Once he's allowed in, we have put a policy in place which says that a guest user, when logging into Salesforce, should only be provided with limited access. The reason for this is that the company could be storing a lot of confidential information on Salesforce, especially with regard to the customer roster or in terms of revenue information or sales information that Alec might need access to in order to get his job done, but may not be something that the company is comfortable with allowing him to download. So Additum Corp lets Alec know that his access to Salesforce is being monitored. When he continues to Salesforce, he is then able to see all of the information that he has access to. He sees a document that seems interesting, but clearly is a sales contract that is not something that he should be accessing. So when he clicks download, this triggers a policy and the download is restricted. It says that due to organizational policies, the download of Northwind's sales contract is restricted, and that it is because Alec is an external user that he's not permitted to download it. Now, the content itself was something that if Alec needed access to, he could see and he could read through, which enables him to be productive. And the protection is simply in place because this is not a contract that he should be downloading. To summarize, we've gone through 4 use cases that helped us to establish or illustrate the value that we provide within Azure Active Directory across providing seamless access, facilitating collaboration, unlocking IT efficiencies, and enhancing security and compliance. We hope that with this session, you now have an understanding of what Azure Active Directory provides. We urge you to please go try Azure Active Directory today for free. Or if you are a customer who already has Azure Active Directory, we hope that you will use some of the resources that we have that can help you with your implementation, including the Fast Track team, as well as the Get to Production team. In both cases, Microsoft engineers engage directly with you to get you up and running with Azure Active Directory. Thank you.